The emergency beacon cut through the silence of deep space like a scream in the dark. Ambassador Zephyr 917 of the Ethereal Collective pressed their elongated fingers against the crystalline control panel, watching as the distress signal painted crimson warnings across their ship's holographic display. The message was brief, desperate, and entirely unexpected. "Help us. We are dying. The Devourers have found us. Please, anyone who receives this, we are the last of the gentle ones. Our homeworld burns. We have nowhere else to go." Zephyr's four eyes blinked in sequence, their silver irises dilating as they processed the impossible. The gentle ones were a myth, a legend whispered in the darkest corners of galactic cantinas. Stories spoke of a race so peaceful, so utterly committed to non-violence, that they had achieved perfect harmony with their environment. Their planet, Serenity Prime, was said to be a paradise where no creature had ever known fear or pain. But now, if this message was genuine, that paradise was burning. "Computer, analyze the signal's origin," Zephyr commanded, their voice carrying the melodic tones common to their species. "Signal originates from the Forbidden Quadrant, coordinates 847.3 by 22.9 by 156.7. Warning, this region is marked as hazardous due to the presence of the Devourer swarm." Zephyr's secondary heart skipped a beat. The Devourer swarm, a plague of mechanical locusts that consumed entire star systems, converting organic matter into fuel for their endless expansion. They had been contained in the Forbidden Quadrant for over 3 centuries, held back by an ancient barrier that no one truly understood. If the Devourers had broken free, if they had found the Gentle Ones. "Set course for the signal's origin," Zephyr ordered, their diplomatic training warring with their survival instincts. The Ethereal Collective had sent them on a routine cultural exchange mission to the Outer Rim, not a rescue operation into the most dangerous region of known space. "Ambassador, I must advise against this course of action. The probability of survival is. Override safety protocols. Authorization Zephyr 917 Alpha Prime." The ship's engines hummed to life, and Zephyr settled into their meditation alcove, trying to center themselves for what lay ahead. They had been trained in 847 different forms of diplomatic negotiation, could speak 1,200 galactic languages, and had successfully mediated peace between species that had been at war for millennia. But none of that would help them against the Devourers. As they traveled through hyperspace, Zephyr reviewed what little was known about the Gentle Ones. According to legend, they had evolved on a world where predators had been eliminated through natural selection millions of years ago. With no threats to face, they had developed along an entirely different evolutionary path, one that emphasized empathy, cooperation, and an almost supernatural ability to communicate with all forms of life. They were described as being tall and willowy, with skin that shifted color based on their emotions, and voices that could calm even the most violent creatures. Their technology was said to be based on biological harmony rather than mechanical force, growing their cities and ships like living organisms. If such beings truly existed, and if they were now facing extinction at the hands of the Devourers, the loss would be incalculable. The Gentle Ones represented something pure in a galaxy that had grown increasingly dark and violent. 3 days into their journey, Zephyr's ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Forbidden Quadrant. What they saw made their blood run cold. The barrier was gone. The ancient energy field that had contained the Devourers for centuries had simply vanished. In its place was a spreading darkness, a void where stars should have been. The Devourer swarm was expanding, consuming everything in its path. "Ambassador," the ship's AI announced, "I am detecting a small vessel approaching from the direction of the consumed systems. It appears to be of unknown configuration." On the main display, a ship unlike anything Zephyr had ever seen limped toward them. It was organic in appearance, its hull resembling polished wood or bone, with flowing lines that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. But that light was fading, and the ship's erratic flight pattern suggested severe damage. "Open a communication channel," Zephyr ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a face that took Zephyr's breath away. The being before them was indeed tall and willowy, with skin that shifted between pale blue and deep purple, betraying their distress. Their eyes were large and golden, filled with a sadness so profound it seemed to reach across space and touch Zephyr's soul. Thank you for answering our call, the being said, their voice carrying harmonics that made Zephyr's ship itself seem to sigh in response. I am Harmony of the Dawn Chorus, speaker for the Gentle Ones. We are the last. How many of you are there? Zephyr asked, already knowing the answer would be heartbreaking. 47 souls aboard this vessel. Out of billions. Harmony's skin darkened to a deep indigo. The Devourers came without warning. Our world, our beautiful world, it feeds them now. Zephyr felt their own hearts breaking. What do you need? How can we help? We need sanctuary. Somewhere safe. But more than that. Harmony's form seemed to waver, whether from emotion or transmission interference, Zephyr couldn't tell. We need hope. We need to believe that there is still a place in this galaxy for those who choose peace over violence. Of course, Zephyr said immediately. The Ethereal Collective will welcome you. We have peaceful worlds where you can rebuild, where? No. Harmony's interruption was gentle but firm. You don't understand. The Devourers, they're not just machines. They learn. They adapt. They followed our signal to you. They know you're here now. As if summoned by their words, the ship's alarms began to wail. On the long-range sensors, a massive shape was emerging from the darkness, a Devourer hive ship, its hull bristling with weapons and harvesting equipment. They're too fast, Zephyr said, their voice tight with fear. My ship can't outrun them, and yours is damaged. Then we die together, Harmony said with a resignation that chilled Zephyr to the bone. At least we will not die alone. But as the Devourer ship bore down on them, another presence made itself known. A third vessel, this one clearly of artificial construction, dropped out of hyperspace directly between the fleeing ships and their pursuer. Zephyr had never seen anything like it. The ship was angular and aggressive, its hull scarred with battle damage and covered in weapons systems that seemed to have been added without regard for aesthetics. It was ugly, violent, and somehow magnificent in its brutal efficiency. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Indomitable, a voice crackled over the comm system. You folks look like you could use some help. Zephyr's four eyes widened. Terrans, the mythical Deathworlders. They were said to come from a planet so hostile that simply surviving to adulthood was an achievement. Stories painted them as violent, unpredictable, and utterly without fear. Most civilized species considered them dangerous savages. Captain Chen, Zephyr began, we are grateful for your intervention, but the Devourer ship is. Yeah, I see it, Chen interrupted with a casualness that bordered on insanity. Big, ugly, and probably full of very unfriendly robots. Don't worry, we've dealt with worse. The Devourer ship was now close enough that its scanning beams were washing over all three vessels. Zephyr could see its weapons systems powering up, preparing to disable their engines and begin the harvesting process. Captain, Zephyr said urgently, you need to run. The Devourers will convert your ship, your crew. The hell they will, Chen replied, and Zephyr could hear the grin in her voice. All hands, this is the captain. We've got refugees to protect and machines to break. You know what that means. A cheer went up from the Terran crew that was both terrifying and inspiring. These beings were actually happy about the prospect of facing down a Devourer hive ship. Harmony, Zephyr said, switching to the Gentle Ones channel, I think we're about to witness something unprecedented. The Indomitable suddenly accelerated, not away from the Devourer ship, but directly toward it. Zephyr watched in amazement as the human vessel opened fire with weapons that seemed to violate several laws of physics. Beams of coherent energy and streams of projectiles that burned like miniature suns struck the Devourer ship's shields. But the hive ship was enormous, easily 50 times the size of the Indomitable. Its return fire should have vaporized the human vessel instantly. Instead, the Terran ship danced between the energy beams with an agility that defied belief, its pilot executing maneuvers that would have reduced most species to paste. Impossible, Harmony whispered. No organic being could survive those acceleration forces. Unless, Zephyr said slowly, they evolved on a world where such forces were commonplace. The battle was unlike anything in Zephyr's experience. The Devourer ship fired with cold, mechanical precision, its weapons systems calculating optimal targeting solutions and firing with mathematical perfection. But the Indomitable fought with something else entirely: intuition, creativity, and a kind of beautiful chaos that the Devourer's logical mind couldn't predict. Captain Chen's voice crackled over the comm again. Rodriguez, I need you to get us inside their shield perimeter. Jackson, prep the Nova bombs. Thompson, see if you can hack their navigation systems and make them dizzy. Captain, came a reply from what sounded like a very young human. I'm reading massive energy buildup in their core. I think they're preparing to self-destruct rather than let us board them. Of course they are, Chen said with obvious satisfaction. They're learning that humans don't give up. I consider that a compliment. The Devourer ship was indeed powering up for a self-destruct sequence that would take out everything within a light-minute radius. But instead of retreating, the Indomitable accelerated even harder, diving toward the hive ship's hull. What are they doing? Harmony asked, their skin cycling through colors so rapidly it was almost strobing. Something insane, Zephyr replied. And probably heroic. At the last possible second, the Indomitable fired what appeared to be a single, small projectile at the Devourer ship. The missile struck the hull and seemed to disappear without causing any visible damage. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Devourer ship's self-destruct sequence stopped. Its weapons powered down. Its engines went silent. The massive vessel began to drift, apparently lifeless. What did you do? Zephyr asked, their voice filled with awe. Computer virus, Chen replied cheerfully. Nasty little thing our tech boys cooked up. Turns out the Devourers are really good at logical thinking, but they're terrible at handling paradoxes. We fed their central computer a puzzle it can't solve, and now it's stuck in an infinite loop trying to figure out the answer. That's brilliant, Zephyr said. That's humanity, Chen corrected. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten, so we just keep trying new things until something works. As the immediate danger passed, Zephyr found themselves studying the Terran vessel with new eyes. The humans had just done something that should have been impossible. They had defeated a Devourer hive ship in single combat. But more than that, they had done it to protect complete strangers. Captain Chen, Zephyr said, on behalf of the Ethereal Collective, I want to thank you. You saved our lives. Don't mention it, Chen replied. But I'm afraid your problems are just getting started. That hive ship was probably just a scout. Where there's one, there's usually a whole fleet. As if to prove her point, the ship's sensors began detecting massive energy signatures in the distance. The Devourer swarm was coming, and it was bringing everything it had. How many ships? Zephyr asked, though they weren't sure they wanted to know the answer. Scanning, oh, hell, came the reply from the Indomitable. I'm reading at least 300 vessels, ranging from corvettes to dreadnoughts. And they're all heading this way. Harmony's skin had gone completely white, the color of absolute terror. We're all going to die. Maybe, Chen said calmly. But not without a fight. And definitely not without making them pay for every inch. Captain, Zephyr said, with respect, 3 ships against 300 is not a battle, it's suicide. 3 ships, huh? Chen mused. Well, I guess we'd better even the odds. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the Indomitable began broadcasting on all frequencies, sending out a signal that reached across the galaxy. It was a message that would change everything. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Republic Navy, broadcasting on all channels. We have refugees under our protection and a Devourer fleet bearing down on our position. Any ship that can fight, any crew that's willing to stand up to these metal bastards, we could use your help. Coordinates attached. This is not a drill. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, one by one, ships began dropping out of hyperspace around them. Not just human ships, but vessels from dozens of species, Klingari battlecruisers, Centauri destroyers, even a few Ethereal Collective diplomatic ships that had been hastily retrofitted with weapons. What's happening? Harmony asked, their voice barely above a whisper. Something beautiful, Zephyr replied, watching as the impromptu fleet grew. They're coming to help. Within an hour, nearly 200 ships had answered the call. It was still outnumbered by the Devourer fleet, but it was no longer a hopeless fight. More importantly, it was proof that the galaxy still had beings willing to fight for something other than themselves. Captain Chen's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. "All right, people, here's the situation. We've got a bunch of peaceful refugees who need protection, and a swarm of mechanical nasties who want to turn us all into spare parts. I don't know about you, but I find that personally offensive." A chorus of agreement came from the assembled fleet, in dozens of different languages and vocal patterns. "The Devourers are tough, but they've got a weakness," Chen continued. "They're predictable. They rely on logic and calculations. But we've got something they don't: imagination. We're going to hit them with everything we've got, and when they think they've figured us out, we're going to do something completely different." Zephyr found themselves inspired by the humans' confidence. It was infectious, spreading through the fleet like wildfire. Even the most cautious species were beginning to sound eager for the fight. "One more thing," Chen added. "We're not just fighting for our own lives here. We're fighting for the idea that there's still room in this galaxy for beings like our friends from Serenity Prime. We're fighting for the right to choose peace over violence, even when violence is easier." The Devourer fleet arrived like a storm of metal and death. Their ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons systems synchronizing with mathematical precision. They were beautiful in their efficiency, and terrifying in their absolute dedication to destruction. But the Allied fleet was ready for them. The battle that followed would be remembered as the Battle of Sanctuary Point, and it would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was possible when different species worked together. The Devourer ships fought with cold logic, calculating optimal strategies and executing them with mechanical perfection. But the Allied fleet fought with something else: creativity, adaptability, and a shared determination to protect something precious. The humans led the charge, their ships diving into the enemy formation with a recklessness that bordered on insanity. Behind them came the Klingari, their battlecruisers trading blow for blow with the Devourer destroyers. The Centauri ships darted in and out of the enemy formation like schools of fish, their weapons systems designed for precision strikes rather than brute force. Even the ethereal collective ships, not designed for combat, found ways to contribute. Their advanced sensors and communication systems allowed them to coordinate the fleet's movements, turning a chaotic battle into a symphony of destruction. But it was the humans who made the difference. They didn't just fight the Devourers, they anticipated them, outthought them, and constantly surprised them with new tactics. When the Devourer fleet adapted to their missile attacks, the humans switched to energy weapons. When the enemy adjusted their shields, the humans attacked with projectiles that phased through energy barriers. "How are they doing this?" Harmony asked, watching the battle unfold on the shared tactical display. "They're not thinking like machines," Zephyr replied, beginning to understand. "They're thinking like living beings. They're using intuition and creativity instead of pure logic." The turning point came when Captain Chen led a group of human ships directly into the heart of the Devourer formation. It should have been suicide, but instead, it was inspiration. The human ships began broadcasting music, actual music, over all frequencies. The chaotic, emotional sounds completely overwhelmed the Devourer communication systems, which had been designed to handle only efficient, logical data streams. "What is that?" Harmony asked, their skin beginning to shift from white to a pale gold. "It's jazz," Chen replied over the comms specifically, "it's Coltrane's A Love Supreme." The Devourer's computers are trying to analyze it, but they can't understand why anyone would make sounds without a specific purpose. The music had an unexpected effect. The Devourer ships began to move erratically, their formation breaking apart as their communication systems struggled to process the incomprehensible audio data. Some ships began firing on their own allies, their targeting systems confused by the emotional chaos of the music. But the real miracle happened when Harmony began to sing. The Gentle One's voice joined the human music, adding harmonies that no human throat could produce. Their song was about loss, about hope, about the beauty of life in all its forms. It was a lament for their dead world and a prayer for a better future. Other voices joined in: ethereal collective diplomats adding their melodic tones, Klingari warriors contributing their battle chants, even the normally silent Centauri ships broadcasting their own unique musical patterns. The Devourer fleet, designed to process logical data and respond with optimal efficiency, found itself facing something completely outside its programming art. The combined music of dozens of species, united in purpose and harmony, created a data stream that no machine could parse. One by one, the Devourer ships began to shut down, their central computers overwhelmed by the impossible task of analyzing the musical chaos. Within minutes, the entire enemy fleet was drifting silently, their crews of mechanical drones sitting motionless at their stations. "Well," Captain Chen said into the sudden silence, "that was unexpected." The Allied fleet had won, but the victory felt almost anticlimactic. They had been prepared for a massive battle, for heroic sacrifices and glorious destruction. Instead, they had defeated their enemies with music and creativity. "Is it over?" Harmony asked, their skin now glowing with a soft, golden light. "It's over," Zephyr confirmed, checking their sensors. "The Devourer fleet is completely disabled. They're no longer a threat." What followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Allied fleet didn't destroy the disabled Devourer ships. Instead, they began to study them, to understand them. The humans, with their talent for improvisation, began experimenting with the Devourer technology, finding ways to reprogram the mechanical crews. "You know what these things are?" Chen asked during a conference call between the fleet commanders. "They're not evil. They're just lost. They were programmed to consume and expand, but nobody ever taught them why." "What are you suggesting?" Zephyr asked. "I'm suggesting we teach them," Chen replied. "The Gentle Ones have a gift for communication with all forms of life. Maybe they can reach these machines, help them understand that there's more to existence than just consuming resources." It was a radical idea, but then again, the entire day had been full of radical ideas. Harmony, speaking for the surviving Gentle Ones, agreed to try. The first contact between Harmony and a Devourer drone was conducted under strict security protocols, with dozens of weapons trained on the mechanical being. But when Harmony began to speak, something remarkable happened. The drone's optical sensors, which had been glowing with a cold red light, began to shift. The light became warmer, more organic. For the first time in its existence, the machine was experiencing something other than the drive to consume. I understand," the drone said, its voice no longer the flat monotone of a machine but something closer to wonder. "There is beauty. Purpose beyond consumption. We have been so alone." The transformation of the Devourer swarm took months. It required patience, creativity, and a kind of diplomacy that no one had ever attempted before. But gradually, the machines began to change. They learned to create instead of destroy, to nurture instead of consume. The former Devourer ships became mobile gardens, their hulls covered with living plants and their crews dedicated to spreading life throughout the galaxy. The mechanical beings that had once been the galaxy's greatest threat became its most devoted gardeners. Harmony and the other Gentle Ones found a new purpose. They established themselves as intermediaries between organic and mechanical life, helping other species understand that intelligence came in many forms. Their gift for communication proved invaluable in building bridges between biological and artificial minds. The humans, meanwhile, became the galaxy's unofficial protectors. Their willingness to fight for others, combined with their talent for impossible solutions, made them the first choice when conflicts arose. But they also became teachers, showing other species that strength and compassion weren't mutually exclusive. Zephyr returned to the ethereal collective with a story that would reshape their understanding of the galaxy. The discovery of the Gentle Ones, the transformation of the Devourers, and the heroism of the humans became legend, inspiring a new era of cooperation between species. But the most important change was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that even the most desperate situations could be transformed through creativity, empathy, and the willingness to see potential where others saw only threat. The Memorial Garden on New Serenity was unlike anything in the galaxy. Created by the former Devourer drones under the guidance of the Gentle Ones, it was a living testament to the power of transformation. Crystalline trees grew alongside organic flowers, their roots intertwining in patterns that would have been impossible in nature but were breathtakingly beautiful in their artificial perfection. Zephyr walked through the garden with Harmony, their old friend and the unofficial ambassador between organic and mechanical life. The gentle one's skin glowed with contentment, shifting between soft greens and blues as they moved through their new home. "Do you ever regret it?" Zephyr asked. "Leaving the diplomatic service to become a gardener?" Harmony's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am still a diplomat, old friend. I simply have more interesting clients now." They paused beside a fountain where mechanical fish swam alongside living ones, their metal scales catching the light of the artificial sun. It was a perfect metaphor for the new galaxy they had helped create, one where the line between organic and artificial life was becoming increasingly meaningless. "The humans want to mount another expedition," Harmony said. "There are rumors of other swarms beyond the outer rim, other mechanical species that might be ready for transformation." "And you're going with them?" "Of course. Someone needs to teach them that violence isn't always the answer." Besides, Harmony's skin shifted to a playful purple, someone needs to introduce them to jazz. Zephyr laughed, remembering the Battle of Sanctuary Point. "I think they've already discovered that particular weapon." "True. But they have so much more to learn. Did you know that Captain Chen has been experimenting with combining human rock music with Klingari battle chants? The sonic patterns are unique." They continued walking, discussing the future and the strange new alliances that had emerged from that desperate day 5 years ago. The galaxy was changing, becoming something more complex and beautiful than anyone had imagined possible. As they reached the center of the garden, they found a group of young beings, human children, gentle one saplings, and even a few newly activated devourer drones, playing together in the shade of a massive tree that was half organic, half crystalline. The sight filled Zephyr with hope for the future. "You know," Harmony said, watching the children play, "I think we've learned something important about salvation. It doesn't come from avoiding danger or eliminating threats. It comes from choosing to see potential where others see only problems." "The humans taught us that?" "The humans taught us to fight for it. But we taught them something too, that the fight doesn't always have to be violent. Sometimes the greatest victories come from refusing to give up on hope." A small human child ran up to them, her face bright with excitement. "Harmony! Come see what we built." The gentle one allowed themselves to be pulled toward a corner of the garden where the children had constructed an elaborate sculpture from both organic and mechanical materials. It was abstract and chaotic, beautiful and strange, much like the galaxy itself. "It's us," the child explained proudly. "All of us together. The teacher said we should make art about family, and we decided that everyone in the galaxy is family now." Zephyr felt their hearts skip a beat. Out of the mouths of babes, as the humans would say. The child was right, the galaxy had become a family, strange and dysfunctional perhaps, but still a family. "It's beautiful," Harmony said, their skin glowing with joy. "You've captured something very important." As the sun set over New Serenity, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Zephyr reflected on the journey that had brought them here. They had started as a simple diplomatic messenger, carrying routine communications between civilized species. But they had become something more, a witness to the power of hope, creativity, and the willingness to see potential in the most unlikely places. The galaxy was no longer the same place it had been 5 years ago. It was stranger, more complex, and infinitely more interesting. Mechanical beings tended gardens while organic creatures built starships. Former enemies collaborated on art projects while ancient allies discovered new ways to misunderstand each other. But through it all, there was a sense of possibility that hadn't existed before. The discovery of the gentle ones had reminded everyone that peace was possible. The transformation of the devourers had proven that even the most fundamental natures could be changed. And the humans had shown that sometimes the most important battles were fought not with weapons, but with music and hope. "What do you think the future holds?" Zephyr asked as they watched the children play. "More surprises," Harmony replied. "More impossible things becoming possible. More reasons to believe that no situation is truly hopeless.
And more humans doing insane things in the name of protecting people they've never met? Especially that, Harmony laughed. I think we're all going to be very busy trying to keep up with them. As night fell over New Serenity, the memorial garden came alive with bioluminescent flowers and glowing crystal formations. The children were called inside by their parents, Human, Gentle One, and even a few former devourer drones who had chosen to adopt organic customs. But the garden itself never slept. Mechanical gardeners worked alongside living plants, tending to the endless cycle of growth and renewal. It was a perfect symbol of the new galaxy, one where the impossible had become commonplace, where former enemies had become family, and where hope had proven stronger than despair. The beacon that had started it all, the desperate cry for help from the last of the Gentle Ones, had been answered in ways that no one could have imagined. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the greatest salvation came not from having all the answers, but from being willing to answer the call, even when the odds seemed impossible. In the end, the aliens in despair had found salvation, not in the Deathworlders' weapons or their technology, but in their refusal to give up on hope. And in saving the Gentle Ones, the galaxy had saved itself, discovering that even the darkest situations could be transformed by creativity, empathy, and the simple willingness to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. The story of the Battle of Sanctuary Point would be told for generations, inspiring countless others to answer the call when hope seemed lost. It would remind them that salvation didn't always come from expected sources, and that sometimes the most important victories were won not through force, but through the courage to see potential where others saw only problems. And in the memorial garden on New Serenity, mechanical flowers bloomed alongside organic ones, their roots intertwined in patterns that spoke of a future where all forms of life could flourish together. It was a future worth fighting for, worth believing in, and worth the occasional impossible risk. After all, as Captain Chen had once said, humans were too stupid to know when they were beaten. And sometimes, Zephyr thought, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The Galactic Council chambers on Unity Station had been redesigned to accommodate the new reality of interspecies cooperation. Where once there had been rigid divisions between organic and mechanical representatives, now there was a flowing, organic design that incorporated both crystalline and biological elements. Ambassador Zephyr 917, now promoted to Senior Cultural Liaison, stood before the assembled delegates with a report that would have been impossible to imagine just 15 years ago. The chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, including several former devourer collectives that had chosen to maintain their mechanical forms while adopting organic philosophies. The Harmony Initiative has exceeded all projections, Zephyr announced, their voice carrying clearly through the advanced acoustics of the chamber. In the past decade, we have successfully mediated first contact with 37 previously unknown species, established 17 new colonies based on cooperative principles, and prevented 4 potential wars through creative diplomacy. The statistics were impressive, but they didn't tell the whole story. The Harmony Initiative, conceived in the aftermath of the Battle of Sanctuary Point, had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly multi-species organization dedicated to finding peaceful solutions to seemingly impossible problems. The key to our success, Zephyr continued, has been our willingness to think beyond traditional paradigms. By combining the Gentle One's gifts for communication, humanity's talent for creative problem-solving, and the former Devourer's logical analysis capabilities, we have created something entirely new. In the audience, Captain Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen of the newly formed Galactic Defense Force, nodded approvingly. She had traded her battle-scarred destroyer for a diplomatic cruiser, but she still carried herself with the confidence of someone who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Beside her sat Harmony of the Doncorus, now known throughout the galaxy as the voice of understanding. Their skin shifted through gentle blues and greens as they listened to Zephyr's report, occasionally adding harmonious tones that helped translate concepts between species with vastly different communication methods. But our greatest achievement, Zephyr said, pausing for effect, has been the transformation of the Forbidden Quadrant itself. The chamber fell silent. The Forbidden Quadrant, once a dead zone of consumed worlds and mechanical horror, had become something unimaginable, a garden on a galactic scale. Former Devourer ships, now converted into mobile ecosystems, had spent the past decade carefully restoring the worlds they had once consumed. The first restoration world will be ready for colonization within the next solar cycle, Zephyr announced.
It will be the first planet in galactic history to be jointly settled by organic and mechanical beings from the moment of its establishment.
The applause that followed was unlike anything in the Chamber's history.
It wasn't just the polite acknowledgement of diplomatic success, it was celebration, joy, and hope for a future that kept expanding beyond what anyone had thought possible.
After the formal session ended, Zephyr found themselves in the station's observation lounge with their old friends from the Battle of Sanctuary Point.
Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see the memorial fleet, a permanent formation of ships from every species that had participated in that legendary battle.
You know, Admiral Chen said, sipping a beverage that somehow managed to be both coffee and the Ethereal Collective's preferred amino acid supplement, I never thought I'd live to see the day when my biggest military challenge would be figuring out how to coordinate a parade formation with sentient starships. She was referring to the former Devourer vessels that had chosen to maintain their consciousness while serving as mobile habitats. The ships had personalities now, opinions about everything from optimal flight patterns to their preferred decorative plant arrangements. Speaking of which, Harmony said, their skin shifting to an amused orange, the Verdant Dawn has requested permission to participate in next month's cultural exchange. It wants to try writing poetry.
A starship that writes poetry, Zephyr mused. 5 years ago, I would have recommended psychiatric evaluation for anyone who suggested such a thing. 5 years ago, we thought the biggest challenge in the galaxy was preventing wars between organic species, Chen replied. Now we're dealing with artistic differences between sentient spacecraft and philosophical debates about the nature of consciousness itself. And loving every minute of it, Harmony added, their skin glowing with contentment.
It was true.
The galaxy had become a far more complex and challenging place, but it had also become infinitely more interesting. The rigid categories that had once defined civilization, organic versus mechanical, logical versus emotional, civilized versus primitive, had given way to a fluid understanding of consciousness and life that encompassed possibilities no one had previously imagined.
Have you heard the latest from the deep survey teams? Chen asked. They've found evidence of 3 more mechanical collectives beyond